Hi everyone, this is the first in our series of trustee interviews with awarding bodies. My name's Kristina Preston. I'm the Head of Awarding and Skills at Peridot Partners, and we're joined today by the lovely Everton Burke. Everton, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Kristina. Everton Burke, I have been in the FE sector for as an employee for just under 30 years. From grassroots level at level L1, we call them, L1 grade lecturer, all the way through to vice principal. Okay, so it's a long journey, but a lovely journey, I have to say. And for the last 10, 11 years, I switched sides from being a paid employee to a governor. And after a couple of years of being a governor, I'm now and have been chair of governors for a long time at a further education college. I've also been doing some consultancy work with training and development, particularly amongst Black and Asian minority ethnic staff. And in the last couple of years, I've also been bitten by the trustee bug. So I've become a trustee of an awarding organisation, a charity, and another smaller charity looking at governorship for Black and minority ethnic people in schools. So that's where I am at the moment.
Fab. So keeping yourself busy then with lots of bits and pieces.
Yeah, just a tad, just a tad.
So obviously with that large portfolio and obviously, you know, your experience and success as a FE college chair, what was it that kind of led you to become a trustee at OCM West Midlands, where you are at the moment?
I was approached by a colleague who said, have you ever thought of being a trustee of an awarding organisation? And I hadn't. And I do like challenges. So I thought, why not? You know, I've been in FE for a long time. Awarding organisations are part and parcel of being in FE. Mm-hmm. And I think particularly what drew me to OCM West Midlands is back in the day when access programs started, I was part of that journey in the colleges. And when I was told about adults being given a second chance of going to HE, or indeed a first chance of going into HE to do a degree and higher qualification, but being prepared and helped to bridge that gap between FE and HE. And I thought, this is fantastic. I like this access thing. And so, believe it or not, when the OCN bid came up, I thought, I remember them. And I remember the great work that used to happen back at the start of access programs. So yes, I'm interested.
Amazing. So, I mean, what was it like kind of going through the recruitment process for a trustee role? Was it quite an easy process? Did you feel like it was, you know, well explained what the role would involve and how each step of the process kind of worked?
It was in that respect. I was, when I declared an interest through an email to the chief executive, I was informed that there was a formal process to go through. Mm-hmm. And I I can't remember which way around it came, whether I went in for the informal chat first or whether I was sent the application pack. But whichever way around it was, those two things happened. I certainly had a pack of information which was fairly full. I went through and did the completion of the forms. And I also spent just under an hour speaking to the chief executive about the organisation, about what it did, about the different aspects of it, and about obviously the trustees and the contribution that they make towards the organisation. And following those two things, I was then invited to be an observer at a meeting, and I went along and observed a board meeting, and it was really interesting. And following that meeting, I was given time to reflect, and I did reflect, and thought, yes, I want to follow this through. And therefore it was really straightforward, nothing complex, nothing onerous, no obstacles. So yeah, really straightforward.
Amazing. And that getting to see a board meeting must have really helped to make sure that it was the right organisation for you, as well as you being a right person for them to join the
Yes,
board as well, because obviously that is so important, isn't it, at board levels?
it is so important. I got into, if I take a step back, I got into being a governor at the college I'm at because I was given the opportunity there to observe a board meeting. And for me, that emotional intelligence thing, that warmth I saw in the room, and the business-like approach, but with warmth,
Yeah.
made me want to join that college. And it was a similar thing with the OCN experience. I saw it, I got a feel, I liked it. And if there was a clincher, not that I think there needed to be, it so happened that the chair of the trustees is somebody I knew professionally from a long time ago in FE, and thankfully I liked this guy. Had I not liked him, I wonder if I'd have still followed through. I suspect and hope I would have, but those little things all come together to help in the decision making.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now 18 months have gone by that you've been on the OCN West Midlands board for.
Yeah.
Has it lived up to expectations from that first kind of meeting? And also, how has it differed to other boards that you've been part of?
Has it lived up? Yes, and more, because it's been hard work. Make
Well,
no
you do
mistake.
like a challenge.
I do like a challenge. I have been, I'm, as well as being a board member and trustee, I'm also on the finance and development, finance and resources, I think we call it, and subcommittee. And therefore, there is work to do there as well to inform the main board meeting and members when we come together. So I didn't expect it to be easy, and because of my prior experience with my own college and subcommittees there, I kind of knew what to expect. But nevertheless, the reward that I feel I get is that there's that contribution, that there's that general board meeting, and there's also that sort of more detailed work around that particular committee, because at the end of the day, finance is key to the longevity of any organization. So yeah, I do get an awful lot from doing that work in the subcommittee.
Amazing. And is it quite similar then to other boards in terms of, in general, sort of the feel? So anyone that was, say, has been in another board and got the experience from there, it'd be quite easy to sort of bring their other board experience to an awarding body board.
Yes, transferable without a doubt. I won't sort of downplay by saying it's much of a muchness, because it isn't. But nevertheless, once one has been through that sort of process with one, it's not that much more different with other boards. And so therefore, once you've done your time on a particular board, you can and should be able to slot in to another board elsewhere. What is going to be different is the dynamics of that board and those people in the room. And I suppose the other thing that's going to be different is if you've always been on boards where everything went swimmingly smooth, you might find it difficult and challenging when things are not quite so smooth and tough decisions have to be made, and nuanced decisions have to be made. So yes, it's good to be on successful boards, but you also need to cut your teeth a little on those boards and those times when things aren't quite as smooth as you'd like them to be.
Absolutely. But I suppose that is the way of education, isn't it? It's never
It.
smooth sailing for very long.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Fantastic. So, having worked with many different awarding bodies over your time in FE and now being directly involved in one, you mentioned just now, obviously, there's not smooth sailing, there's challenging times. What do you think sort of the key challenges awarding bodies are facing at the moment or will be facing sort of coming up?
As part of the key challenges, I think, will be we're in the now, and the now is representation of underrepresented groups. I think that is going to be one of the key challenges for awarding organisations. I think they're doing a fabulous job in terms of the actual qualification that they offer. The products are fine. You know, it's what's happening in the boardroom. And in the boardroom, if you haven't got a diversity of gender and a diversity of ethnicity, I think you're on a sticky wicket, really. You need to, as a board, get diverse, and I reject any argument which says, you know, it's difficult to find diverse members. It ain't difficult. You just need to look for them. They're all around, you know, really. I think you know, it's been comfortable and lazy and complacent to always go back to the same pool to fish for new trustees. And it's not hard work. You just need to look somewhere else rather than the usual place to find those people out there who are not the stereotypical board members that we tend to find.
Absolutely. And I suppose it's all around as well, representing your student groups, isn't it? You know, especially for vocational awarding bodies, where I think, is it 30% of FE student population are from Black and Asian backgrounds?
That's right. That's right.
Having that mix on your board to represent the students that you're selling the product to, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Yeah, it's that there's lots of, you know, lovely little phrases around that I can't even begin to remember most of them, but one of them is, you know, if you can see it, you can be it. And so, and that matters, you know, it matters to underrepresented groups, that they see somebody who looks like them and they think, wow, I'd like to do that as well. You know, there was a lovely little story a couple of years back of a father who took his daughter to a football match. It was a non-professional football match, and one of the referee's assistants was a female, and the daughter had never seen a female, you know, running the line, and she was knocked out by that, and she said to her dad, you know, Dad, I want to be, you know, an assistant referee. And the dad obviously has spoken to the assistant referee, the female, and she was delighted that this young girl, you know, wanted to also be. And thankfully, the FA's publicity machinery got hold of it. And, you know, even if that young girl doesn't ultimately become running a lines person, the fact is that she was inspired to want to be one at such a young age. So yes, you start putting more Black and Asian faces in the boardroom, you start putting more women, then as people look, see and read about it, it will inspire others to think, hang on, I never thought of that. Why not?
Yeah.
And then they begin to go down those same roads as well.
Fantastic. And I guess the ultimate result is that you end up having a diverse board with then diverse outwards from the board, sort of through the organisation and out into the wider world that you're affecting.
Yeah. I have a board at my college that is now more female governors than male governors. And I tell you, I'm proud of that, because these are talented people around the table. And, you know, there are not going to be many colleges who would be able to say the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're there on merit. And why not? You know, why should there be well, we need a couple of women, you know, or we need a couple of black faces, but, you know, we'll stick with the rest as, you know, same old, same old. Don't go there, you know, go for the talent, but look far and wide rather than just near.
Yeah, no, great advice, completely. Yeah. And then they're not feeling like they're tokens as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant. So based on your experience, how do you think governing bodies and trustee boards across awarding an FE could improve their processes to attract members in order to get that diversity?
I think honest conversations with themselves. I think sometimes professional colleagues can blindside ourselves by saying we should only ever pick the most talented people, the best candidate. We decide who the best candidates are, and it could very well be that the best candidate next time out in terms of recruitment needs to be a female candidate. Yeah, you'd be silly to want to change the diverse mix of your board and end up saying, well, actually the most experienced person we interviewed today is another white male, therefore we've got to have him. Actually, you don't. Actually, you can turn around and say, no, we want to change this board. We want to get a better mix. Therefore, we have to actively recruit women. We have to actively include Black and Asian and minority ethnic groups. And therefore, those are going to be, in this occasion, the best candidates. Yeah. And don't feel that, you know, the best candidate is always going to be the white male, because you're doing yourself a disservice and you're doing that individual a disservice, because you're not really challenging them. You are just going down the same old road. So for me, if boards are serious about change, they need to start talking to underrepresented groups. They need to start talking to organizations that are representative of those groups, and they need to then put those people through the process of recruitment. And I openly say this, I have been in situations before where at this moment in time, a particular candidate may be, shall we say, not quite at the same level, but they have shown for me enough potential to get up to that next level. And therefore, let's take a chance on this individual. Let's give them the support and the training that they require to get up to the next level. And if ultimately they don't make it, you've tried. But there are very few people who don't make it without the right support. And that's all I think diverse groups are screaming out for, is give us a chance. Yeah. Give us a chance and we'll show you how good we are, because we might not be oven ready yet, to use my catering background. You know, we might not be oven ready at this moment in time, but give us an opportunity. And I bet you we can make that difference and make that change that you're looking for.
Absolutely. So looking at even, I guess, bringing people in as co-opted members, yes, would also be a great thing, or investing in kind of like like governor boards have student governors and, yes, and things along those lines, those young people, giving them the skills early on to look at those kinds of roles.
We have found our student body to be really switched on when it comes to voting in their presidents, and we've had a good mix. We've had all sorts, all shades and gender and sexuality. You know, they're really switched on, and it does bring a different lens to the boardroom, you know, and it's important that you have that. And as a chair of a group of people, I'm glad that they don't all think the same, and I'm glad that when we have that challenge, because it's just people asking questions, and I'm expecting the senior leaders to be able to address those questions with answers that satisfy the person doing the asking, you know, because it's all part and parcel of the mix. And I encourage that, because it's not conflict at all. It's understanding. You know, I don't understand. I don't think that this is quite right yet. Somebody else does. They need to put their argument in. And then we come to that point where we vote, and we live in a democracy. So yes, democracy prevails at the end of the day.
No, absolutely. So as someone who has been on several boards, and obviously you very much, you know, champion people going onto boards for the reasons we've just said, you know, questioning, having an impact. And you've been in several different sectors, FE, awarding, traditional not-for-profit. Why would you recommend to somebody to join a board? What would you say to somebody that maybe hasn't thought about joining a board before? Actually, this would be really good, and this is why you should look at these things.
It sounds a bit corny, but it's about giving something, and giving something to society, and therefore being able to challenge the institutions later on down the line. You know, if you're not willing to get involved, then to a certain extent you're forfeiting your right to challenge later on. And therefore I encourage, certainly from my point, I encourage anybody who I think would make a good contribution to that particular situation. In my time, I've been a magistrate, and I've said to people, have you ever thought about being a magistrate? Oh no, not me. Oh, I haven't got the brain cells and all that. And I say, I said, I haven't got the brain cells, but you know, I've got common sense. I said, and that's all you need to be a magistrate, you know. So think about it. You know, have you thought about being on a board? Again, there is that kind of perception and mystique about, you know, being in the boardroom, and it ain't that difficult. Yeah, you know, I dare say I would find it really challenging to be a board member at Shell, Royal Dutch Shell, you know, because it's oil and I know nothing about oil, you know, but I dare say I could carry the social brief for that, you know, how does Shell interact with its communities, you know, and it's about representing a perspective and a point of view that helps people to think about, you know, the broader picture. So get involved. I encourage people to get involved because it's a good thing to do, and I think that if you're prepared to do that, you will find that it's really rich out there, and it isn't about money and remuneration. That helps, you know. We've all got to eat. Make no mistake about that, you know. But you know, inwardly, I think people like being kind to other people, and this is a different way of being kind to other people. Get involved at board level, make a contribution, and therefore you'd be surprised at how straightforward it is rather than how difficult it is.
No, absolutely. All about that kind of making a difference, isn't it?
Yes.
And that like bigger world impact that you can have, even though you don't think it's kind of later on when you see it.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. And finally, you have achieved a huge amount by everything that you've just been saying and everything you've done in the FE world. I mean, what are you hoping to have a positive impact on in the awarding sector as a member of the OCM West Midlands board?
That is probably the toughest question you've saved to last, Kristina. Crikey. You know, my initial reaction is wow. I just want to be part of the conversation, part of the discussion, part of the decision making. And it could very well be that, you know, my greatest contribution will be at a time when perhaps a situation is coming along and my experience and indeed my background gives me that little bit of insight that would be otherwise missed. And therefore, you know, I will make my contributions as I go through, as I see fit. I don't know what the biggest contribution is going to be, but, you know, just to be there and to represent a view, I think it is going to be a big factor. And the other thing that's just come to mind is there may be a tentative reluctance at times by boards to have a new member that doesn't look like them. Yeah. And I think by being there and being able to hold my own can begin to change those perceptions. So maybe the contribution is just being there and being part of the discussion rather than anything of, you know, gigantuous proportions. And that matters. People are more interested in the quality of what you've got to say rather than the quantity. So I've never been a big talker, but I've tried to listen, and then I've tried to give a viewpoint when the opportunity comes along or when the chair asks me to. And so for me, I think, yeah, as I'm talking and reflecting at the same time, which is very difficult, I have to say, I think the contribution is going to be, I'm there, I'm not struggling, I'm equal, and therefore let's get more people like Everton who can hold their own, rather than, or dare we take a chance on somebody who doesn't look like us and sound like us.
No, I think that will probably, like you say, have a massive impact, and for people going forward as well. Yeah. Sort of, you know, next generation board members who can look to you as an example to say, if he can do it, then why can't I?
Yeah. I do encourage. It is a reality amongst. It is a reality amongst Black people. Some Black people, not all Black people. Some Black people, that they would be reluctant to ever be the only one in that situation. Yeah, I'm the only Black person in this boardroom. Everybody else is white, and therefore there is a reluctance to go there. And I do try and encourage them to say, you've got to get past that, because if somebody's not the first to do that, there will never be a first. There will never be a change. Yeah. So if you feel that you can make a contribution, do it. And I'm talking to more and more people, Black people, who are now thinking that, yeah, maybe we should, because if the opportunities are now going to become available, we'll be wasting them if, again, you know, I don't want to be the only Black person in the boardroom. You know, let's get in the boardroom, let's contribute, and let's show that actually, you know, we're equal to everybody else in this boardroom, and therefore let's get diverse on this board.
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess there's got to be a first person to make the step.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's disappointing to hear, you know, women members of parliament saying that, you know, it's still an old boys club to a certain extent, you know, for crying out loud, 2021 and that's still happening. It's ludicrous. But you know what, you know, good on any woman who wants to be an MP and get in there, because it will matter and it will change and it will inspire others to follow. And because if women members started to get out because it's such a boys club, then, you know, the boys have won, you know. So good on them. And so the same applies to any black board members who are in those boards, because the stepping stones are, you get in the boardroom, you're a board member, and at some point, in the same way I've stepped up to be a chair of a college board, we'll begin to see more chairs of other boards in other organizations who are black, and therefore it becomes normal rather than, isn't that interesting?
That's
Yeah,
what we want, though, isn't it? We want it to become normal,
yeah,
diversity to be normal, not
to
to
be
be
normal.
what the day will come when diversity isn't necessarily on an agenda, and that's probably the day that we all hope for.
Yes, without a doubt, Lord, it would be great if that happened, you know, within the next 2 years. We just want normality, you know, a mix, you know, and a diverse board, and we'll get there. But we cannot afford not to participate and not to get involved, because, you know, we're doing a disservice then to all the others who want to step up, or who haven't thought about it, but once they've seen it once, they're thinking, oh, I'd like to do that as well.
Absolutely. And just, you know, as kind of a final question, what advice would you give to boards then, obviously, you know, to help, I guess, the first person that is different to them, whether that is gender, sexuality, ethnicity, you know, disability, etc. What would you say to a board that is looking to bring on the first person of a difference, to include that person and make them feel part of the board from day one and not just a token member?
They've got to go looking for strong candidates. It can't just be a black person or a woman. It's got to be somebody who's going to hold their own, because it does matter. If your perception is, you know, we don't want women, we don't want black people, we don't want Asian people because they're not up to the standard, and they go out and they find a weak candidate, you know, it just reinforces what they've always thought. Yeah. So what you do as a board is you say, okay, we want to diversify. We will either do it ourselves, or we'll find professional partners who can go and look for strong candidates of a particular background and characteristics. And we look and get as many and as we can to, you know, come and sit on these boards. So yes, I'm advocating headhunting, because the beginning has to be careful. Yeah, you can do more damage getting the wrong people in there, because, as I say, it just reinforces what they've always thought. But if you've got really good candidates and put them in place, and it shows the other members that, yeah, there are actually black people out there who can hold their own and they're as good as the rest of us. You know, all of a sudden, you know, we've taken a chance on one, it's worked out. Now we start targeting more, because we want to change the dynamics of the board. Yeah, and the same applies obviously to women, and also, you know, from an optics point of view, we need people with disabilities as well to be in those boardrooms, not purely from an optics point of view, but just to send the message out that we are inclusive. Yeah, we are inclusive, and if you're good enough, there's an opportunity here for you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And then obviously once they've made the appointment, I guess it's about treating that person no different to how you would treat any of your, in
Yeah,
inverted commas, normal board appointments,
that's right.
making sure that their voice is equally as heard
Yeah,
as somebody else's.
yeah, and that's where the chair of the board, and particularly also the chief executive of the board, comes in. Two key people who need to ensure that they're sending out the right messages to the rest of the board, that, you know, this person will be not held to a higher standard than the rest of you, and by the same token, they won't be given a free pass either. You know, they'll be treated in the same way as the rest of you, because if you've gone down that road of choosing a really strong candidate, then they've got to, you know, they've got to have wanted to be there in the first place, and therefore they're going to be doing their bit to make sure that they're performing at a high standard.
Absolutely. Oh, well, Everton, thank you so much for today. Is there anything more that you want to add, or any words of wisdom that you want to put out there to any aspiring board and trustee members?
It's get out there and make a contribution. Yeah, it is not as difficult as you think, and there are lots of boards and lots of people who would welcome, you know, a change of faces around that table. Give them the opportunity to make that change, and rather than, you know, shy away from being a board member. And, you know, being a board member ain't that difficult. You know, I have to keep stressing that. It ain't that difficult to be a board member. You've just got to be able to listen, read, understand what you're being asked, and make that contribution. And it isn't that difficult at the end of the day. But a lot of people just, it doesn't cross their mind to do that. And that's what we've got to try and overcome. Get people switched on to doing it, because then hopefully they'll begin writing into boards and chief executives saying that, hey, I would like to be a member of your board. And it might be a non-traditional way of doing it, but so what? You know, have a go. You never know what the outcome will be.
Absolutely. Wise words there, Everton. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Kristina.
No worries. Well, thank you again so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Yeah, hopefully we will speak again soon regarding other bits and pieces.
Thank you.
Yeah, look forward to going from there.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and the questions as well. They're really thought-provoking on my part. I hope I haven't rambled on too much, but
no, not at all. It's been very interesting, and lots of good advice, as well as some insights from someone that's been there and can see it as well. So it's
thank
great.
you.
Perfect.
Take care now.
You too. Thank everyone for watching, and hopefully we will see you again for another session soon.